You know what? Isn't it wonderful that Janet is a member of our guild and we get to enjoy this and hopefully have her share some more of it with us. So thank you, Janet.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my journey with you, but first I have to say I'm just so delighted so many came out on this bitter cold night. And I would also say, somebody asked me if I left anything home. Believe it or not, I did. But, so we'll just get started. I actually had the nerve to bring my first actual quilt that I made. And this has been across the country and in the camper and all of that. This was number 1, and you can see it was tied, and it actually did get done in one day. So she kept us going. Okay. These maple leaves were a block of the month, and this is all the way back in about '96. Yes, that I won these. We were still meeting in that little church on Bay Avenue at the time, down in the basement. And I remember walking in, and the quilts were up on the wall, and I walked up and I said, "Oh, I want to win those." Somebody next to me says, "That's what you have to say," and there they are. So this went with my son to college. And he was really good about it. Whenever the crowd walked in, he'd put it in the closet. So it was quilted by Lynn Kelly. And she had just begun doing professional quilting at the time. And you can see that it was not heavily quilted because back then we didn't do that heavy a quilting as we do today. So I'm going to take this when I pick up the next quilt from Lynn to show her where she was started. Okay, thank you. Very cool. The next one, I have to really reminisce about Carol Lauterbach of happy memory. Was the teacher for this quilt. When she came in a couple years after I did into the guild, she almost immediately took up teaching. We used to have a B meeting in between the first meeting. We had an A meeting and a B meeting. Well, this was the A meeting. The B meetings, she took up teaching. And so we went through right from the beginning, making templates, and she started with the easiest thing and progressed from there. And the last one was drafting. So we had lots of fun with that, and I've still got a notebook full of all of this quilt. And you can put it together any way you want. I didn't know what I was doing, so that's what I did.
What year was this?
I finished that, I think, in '98, but I'm not, does it say? Or is it?
2000.
Okay, that's when it got finished, but we started it a little earlier than that. Then we always had great workshops in this guild. And I don't remember who the teacher was who came in, but this was called King's Crown. It was kind of a small quilt, but it was a fun workshop.
Is that the painless borders?
Yes.
Yeah. That was painless borders.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, Kathy.
Painless? Painless borders.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a really interesting class. She taught us how to do half square triangles very differently.
Yeah, and as I recall, this one went down, this piece was put, and then this piece, it was one of those kind of things where you did it, you assembled it on the diagonal in the end. It was really a fun thing.
Very pretty.
The next one was, I called this one Alaska Revisited, and Carol Lauterbach did quilt this one. I asked her beforehand if it was okay to put flannel on the back.
I remember this one.
We went to Alaska as a family, and it was the most wonderful trip. We had 2 weeks on a bus through all places in all parts of Alaska and even to the Yukon. And then a few years later, I found this book of quilting, this project from all about Alaska. Now, but the interesting thing is I had previously won all these batiks that you see in here at the guild meeting. And I put them away till I got just the right quilt. And then when I came across that book, I decided to go with it. The animals are all suede cloth, which was really nice because you just edge stitch that, you don't have to turn it under. And then I found the backing, which is all North Woods. So Carol agreed to quilt it with the flannel. I didn't know how that would work, but it did. Okay, that's a heavy quilt. Yes, it is. This next one is called an All-Star Quilt, and this was Carol's next set of lessons after that other sampler. And she again provided all the direction. We started with the easiest star and progressed, and some of them were quite difficult. And the center one was a challenge for us to do a drafting. So we had a lot of these lessons at Kathy Hendrickson's house in Lakewood. We would meet there. I know we also had other meetings with Carol, different lessons she gave. We would meet in the senior center in Toms River. And where else did we meet? The library, Toms River Library, and Kathy's house as well. What? Yes, Carol's house as well when she lived on the bay. Okay. Yeah. This is Jacob's Ladder quilt shop. That was in Allenwood. That was a wonderful shop. And what she did for the Saturday sampler, you would show up and you get the one, and then if you came back on the first Saturday of the month or something like that, with the quilt block finished, you got the next one. And so I managed to get them all. I remember she'd look at it and something, this last block in particular was supposed to be like Christmas colors. And if I didn't really like what she put, I'd substitute. She'd say, "That's not my fabric." Oh well. I remember one quilt show when we must have had half a dozen, or maybe even a dozen, blooming 9 patches.
Oh yeah.
Fran took us out to Pennsylvania. We had a bus ride and helped us pick out all the fabric, because this quilt has a trick to it. You pick out your favorite fabric and then you go from there. So you've got yellow in the middle, and then you're going to take, this has pink, then we go to green, pink, and yellow. Then the next one out, we pick up another color. So you're always picking up a color and going outwards. So that's the way that works. Well, I picked, the one I picked out first was the purple. So I kind of worked backwards, I guess. Yeah. But it worked. So.
That must have taken a lot of fabric.
It took a lot of fabric, but then on top of it, this was another one. I think this is the one you assembled it with a ruler across the book, because you had to do this line. It was on a diagonal. Each one was on a diagonal. So Fran showed us how to put something on the book to keep your line working. No, I wasn't beginner. Didn't feel like it. The squares were tiny. No. They're about 1.5 inches and then 1 inch finished, yeah, each block.
Lots of little pieces.
It was a gorgeous Okay, I always say I had 2 great teachers. One was Carol, the other one was Fran. Fran, this was my first quilt lesson with Fran when she was teaching at Jacob's Ladder. And so I took that. Actually, you can make 4 different ones into a quilt, but I just chose to do this one. Yeah, and then I started from there. I thought maybe I knew a little bit, so I progressed to the next quilt. I knew enough about applique. there was a magazine that was coming out with a different bird each month or so. And so I thought, well, they look easy enough. I'll try those birds. Yeah. So I got the birds all finished and stuck in a box somewhere. Yes, they were a UFO for a while. And then I thought, well, I might as well try and finish that quilt. There are 13 different greens in that quilt. So it was a real shopping extravaganza to go find them all. So I brought this one for Jane. Jane and I are in the Brick Chicks group, and she talks about this quilt a lot. Well, we all made this quilt, and we would do, I don't know, 1 or 2 a month in our meetings, 1 a month, and eventually finished it. Some of them made 12-inch blocks. I chose to do the 6-inch blocks. That's the Underground Railroad one from, what's her name?
Eleanor
Quilt the
Burns.
Day, Eleanor Burns. Yeah.
Mine's very big.
This was more of Fran's lessons at Jacob's Ladder. And you.
This is the one.
Oh, I love this too. I look at this, I really can't believe I did it. But I started this with the easiest one, the tulips down there, and then progressed through the book. But I thought, well, I've learned enough. I think I'll finish this on my own. Well, 2 years later, I'm back to lessons because it wasn't getting anywhere. So finally it did, and Fran taught me how to do all that along the edges. Who quilted? Oh, Carol Waterback quilted this. Yes. And it's rather soft. It's not a real harsh quilt. I think sometimes we get them so quilted that they're stiff as a board, but this is a nice soft one. Okay, this is the butterfly quilt. I titled it Butterflies Delight Me, but I liked the idea of combining piecing and applique on the same quilt. And Liz Henny was kind enough to loan me the pattern. She made this quilt. Where are you, Liz?
Right here.
Liz made this quilt with the piano key border.
Yes.
But I wanted to try this. And I did that border on another quilt, you'll see.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sure.
These butterflies, this is the printed material. And then when I wanted to do the butterflies, I just cut these out and appliqued them on. I know, I did. I put a couple of quilts in. That last one took second place in applique. The one. Yes, but I thanked Fran that year for not entering. This one was a block exchange, actually, with a group called the Unraveling Spools. It's kind of made up with, well, a couple of us are here, and then there's some from Rebecca Reels and some from that Spring Lake group. What are they? Circle of Friends. So we all made 9 patches and exchanged. Did we exchange the 9 patches? We did, right, Kath? Yeah. And then each one was to decide how they wanted to set them. So I chose to do a Jacob's Ladder type of setting. And I remember Fran's, she put gray in between all the blocks, and it was really stunning. It really was. So, okay, thank you. I couldn't not mention Mina Bess in my travels, because Mina Bess was actually, in my book, the founder, because she's the one who went around to the libraries and put up the information about gathering the quilters together. She was the 3rd president of the group, but she actually was the one who instigated the Beachpulm Quilters. Well, she's still teaching at Crafty Fabrics, but I took this lesson at Crafty years ago, and it's a little paper piecing thing that I drag out every Christmas, and it's actually 7 diamonds that you do, all the same, and then sew it together, and face the whole thing. So there's no binding on it. Now here's the one with the piano key border. But I did it the hard way. I used the scraps from what I had. Yeah. Okay, this one is called Covering America. It was in our show a few years ago, and each state is represented. There are 50 blocks here. Yeah. And a few I remember. This one's Hawaii because the flowers are in it, and New Jersey's isn't too exciting. It's a bullseye.
New Mexico.
Okay.
That's what I bring to the table. The Southwest.
So I really should put the sheet on the back in an envelope so that people can find their state. That's a heavy one. Oh, this next one is another block exchange, but this was a block exchange with the Brick Chicks. And it's a simple quilt, but I think very effective. And I love scrappy anyway, so that was right up my alley. Yeah, Lynn Kelly quilted this too. She's done more of my quilts than anybody else. Oh, this is a round robin. Again, it was done by the Unraveling Spools group, which we meet every Tuesday. And the center block is what each person did. So that's my center block. And then each person did something else to go around it. So it was really fun because what we did was the rules, we presented the rules. One of the gals had done one, and so she had all the rules, presented them, we agreed to all the rules, and then each person got a notebook, and when you pass on your center to the next person, you also send a little material with it, and your notebook. And in it you have what you really don't want. Like, most of us put, you know, a certain type of applique that you could do with this and that, or if you hate the color brown, I'm not crazy about brown, there's no brown in there. Things like that. When I stepped down as your president, you gave me Friendship Stars. And that's the quilt I made with them. Yeah. I'm kind of sorry they weren't signed, but... So... If you can remember, boy, you're good. Yeah. I did have a few left to make a quilt on. So you ever walk in a quilt shop and something just speaks to you? Yeah. Every time, right?
Just doesn't speak well.
It speaks to me, but that's usually the last time it speaks to me. By the time I get it home, it's very quiet.
This quilt is called Montana, I believe. And I found that down in Burlington, Old City Quilts. And I really loved the quilt. It was pretty reasonable, so I bought the kit, I made it, and I sent it off to my nephew, because all my nephews and nieces also get quilts. So I said, gee, I missed that quilt. I really loved it. I was going to keep it, and I didn't. So they had leftovers. So I got what I could, and then went looking for the rest. And there it is.
So you made it twice.
I made it twice.
Is that the only one you've made?
That's the only one I have made twice. No, I made the One Block Wonder twice. And I will never make it again. But that one, the second one of that, is at the Quilters now. So I hope to bring it in before the end of the year.
Hey Janet, the
Yeah.
silhouettes that were on that quilt, are they all separate?
they're separate blocks, and then it was done like a log cabin type of thing almost. No, they are on the fabric. It was a simple quilt. Another simple quilt. It's just, this is another one. You walk in the shop. Gee, that spoke to me, so I had to have that one. But I like it. It's my colors. That's it. So, but it's really strange how you put things in a show and you think, that one is so special, you're going to get a ribbon like that Covering America one with your piano. They were in the same show. This got a ribbon. Somebody said they hoped I brought the bird quilt, and I didn't know which one,
Yeah.
so I don't know if the other one or this one. This is just a simple one. All paper pieced. So, I like that. It's my winter birds. Nothing much to say about that.
It's like 1,000 little pieces sewn together. Oh,
For
nothing
those of
much
you
to say
with
about that one.
UFOs, 10 years to finish this. You will recognize it somewhere. This was another Carol Lauterbach lesson. She had made this at a workshop, brought it back and said, oh, I want to teach this. And so she did. So we did all of these pieces and had everything ready. It's called a Dresden plate. And you pre-quilted all this cross stuff here. And then you put the rest on. Actually it was supposed to be put on by machine, which I did eventually do that. I cheated on the quilting and I stuffed these up a little bit, but it got together. It was literally in the closet for 10 years. Okay, this was another exchange with the unraveling spools. We exchanged like 5 blocks, and then we do so many mediums and so many darks and that. And some people see pluses, I see crosses, so I named this quilt For Love of Mankind. And what a challenge this was to put together. It was easy enough to have all these pieces, but then I don't have a big house, so my design board is relatively small. So I do a section, and I get that together, and then I lay it on the table and do the next section on the board, and it just took about 6 sections to finish that. But I love it. It's really nice. But I had my eye on this quilt for quite a long time. I really did enjoy making them. They're like 15-inch blocks, and very good direction for this quilt. And the last one I brought, I did use scraps. This is the Farmer's Wife. There are 111 different blocks in this quilt. And if you don't know about this, it started in, I believe it was 1922. The Farmer's Wife was a magazine put out, and the editors asked the question of the farmer's wife, if you had a daughter, would you want her to marry a farmer? And they were to write a letter back and a block, given a block with their answer. So it was quite fun to do the quilt because you would read the letter and then go ahead with the block. So there they are, 111. Craziness. Long time. I would do so many a month, put it away, so many more, put it away, and that kind of thing. Couple years probably, yeah. So that's what I brought tonight. In our house, we had one of those stereos that's so high with all the components in it, nice glass door and shelves. So when the components went, we kept the cabinet, And that's where many of the quilts are. So it's really nice because it showcases them and it's in a spot where the sun never shines, so that's a good thing. There's a couple in the closet and I'm afraid I've run out of space, so that's. So now if I make any more, I have to have a reason. But I know I'll never stop. Any other questions?
Will you teach a
Yes,
workshop?
Lori.
Do you have a favorite, or one that you sleep under that's a favorite, or?
I do. I change them. I have several bed skirts, and I do change them off, but I'm getting a little lazier. Change less, but I do that.
Do you have a favorite pattern that you enjoyed doing of any of those that we saw?
I don't know. I think as I'm working on one, that's the one I like. So
Do you like applique or?
I like them both. That's why, as I say, I like the combination, which I haven't done a lot of that, but I do like to do that. It's fun. Yes.
Will you consider teaching a workshop?
On whatever. Sure. I've done a couple in the distant past.
Is that on that tape?
We got you on file saying you're teaching a workshop.
I just did want to, one more point about Fran. Fran is the expert on color. She is so good with color, and I've learned a lot from her. And I also found a great book on color. That one, the New York Beauty wall hanging that I showed you, was in that book, and it gives you all the color preferences and how to combine them. And so that's help, experience, I think, too. I have to say, it was an honor to be asked. When Paula first approached me, I said, well, I'll think about it, and then she didn't say anything for a long time, and I thought, so now, I was honored because there are so many, many fine quilters in this group, and I hope we'll see more trunk shows.